The ways in which we interact with our surroundings is important in understanding how we shape our environment and in turn shape ourselves. One of the first ways we as a species have interacted with our environment is in the way that which we move. Walking is one of the most prominent ways that we have identified ourselves as human, because when we choose to define something, we look at an object and say, what does it look like, where did it come from, and what can it do? So when we first set out to define what a human is, we got definitions as far back as 350 BC from the likes of Plato, where he defined humans as featherless bipeds. Even over 2,000 years later, we still define humans by the way we move, with Merriam-Webster's dictionary defining a human as a bipedal primate mammal. So when we define us by the way we move, we are putting our two legs as a major defining feature of humanity. So we gotta stop and ask ourselves, are we even good at walking? I'm going to keep this section somewhat short, because I want to focus on some later parts of the video, like how efficient is human walking, what are the benefits of walking, and how to maximize those benefits. Back before the time of man, our ancestors were once arboreal creatures that lived in the lush forests of Africa. But over time, the forested continent of Africa began to lose its numerous amounts of trees, becoming an environment closer to our modern-day savanna. This new environment caused two different challenges for our ancestors to overcome in order for them to survive. First, they needed to overcome the newfound gap between where they lived and where the food is now located. Then secondly, they needed to overcome the total loss in the amount of food available to them. So in order for them to overcome these challenges, our ancestors gave up the ability to grab and climb with their hind legs, giving these new hind legs the sole purpose of balance and locomotion. This also caused our ancestors' front limbs to become more specialized in grabbing and carrying, causing our backs to become more upright, moving our center of mass closer to our belly button, allowing us the ability to stand on our hind legs. Now we know why humans walk. Let's talk about if we're any good at it. In order to see how efficient human walking is, we need to see how much energy is expended in a single stride, meaning 2 complete steps. So we need to first find out how far the average person travels in a single stride. And secondly, we need to see how much energy is expended. With a stride being a pretty ambiguous measure of length due to the fact that height, foot size, and gait are all different from person to person, it is extremely difficult to find an accurate number, with most search results I was able to find being based off 2 different statistics. One of a website called The Walking Site, which makes all its claims without backing it up with any research or data, and the other site being a OUHSC analysis from the 1990s using sources pre-1990s, which I can't find the copies of the original studies. Alright, let's look at what both sources claim as the average stride. So according to the Walking Site website, the average stride is between 64 to 76.2 centimeters, but the OUHSC site claims that the stride is around 158 centimeters, which is about double the amount of the first site. I think they may have been using a different definition of stride, but since I can't find the original source for the second one, guess I'll never know. So we'll use the more reasonable sounding answer of 64 to 76.2. Now that we have a number for the average length of a stride, let's find out how much energy is expended. The best way I can think of is using calories as a unit for how much energy is being used, because the only other way that I see is viable as a measurement is by how much oxygen is required to complete a task. But in the human body, oxygen is not used as a source of energy. Oxygen is used as a source of transportation of ATP that is stored in the form of fat. A quick side note from future me. When I was writing this, I think I should make it more clear why I didn't think that using the total amount of fat loss as a source of measurement instead of calories. My logic was that if fat loss was used as a measurement of how much energy it costs for the average person to move, there'd be quite a big exponential curve when it comes to how much fat is needed before it starts to become detrimental. After scouring the internet again, all I'm finding is absolute garbage. Just a bunch of terrible calorie calculators, which also keep pulling random numbers out of thin air. With OmniCalculator.com claiming that the average adult man weighing about 75 kilograms burns around 500 kilocalories per 10,000 steps, which, if you convert to regular calories, is 500,000 calories. That's more than 138 times more than the average American eats in a day. But the reference source has nothing to do with calories, but deals with weight loss. Most of the credibility of their source is a NLM article, which only mentioned caloric intake and not caloric expense, with this study using the total amount of weight loss as the end measurement. Other sources, such as an article on verywellfit.com, just make stuff up, claiming that in 1 mile a person weighing 72.5 kilograms, not accounting for gender, age, or height, burns around 85 calories per step, which is better than the Omni calculator, but they still made it the fuck up, with the sources for this article linking to a study which measures physical energy costs using MET, which stands for metabolic equivalent of tasks. MET doesn't even measure calories. They measure the total amount of oxygen to complete a task. From what I can gather, there hasn't been a single study that hasn't even gotten close to finding the total amount of energy that is required to travel any distance, with most studies measuring only one factor in isolation and not accounting for anything else. So to answer the question, how efficient is human walking? The answer is, without the necessary studies into the topic, we will never know. Even if a study were to come out, the absolute amount of terrible health blogging websites that spew so much garbage, citing other health blocking websites, which once you get to the end of the chain of links, you have a chance of finding 3 different types of studies. The first is a type of study that has nothing to do with the topic, or the data is misrepresented by the article. For example, the article claiming that you can burn 500,000 calories and 10,000 steps. The second type of study is one where it's over 60 years old and the data is no longer accurate. And the third type of study is the ones where there is faulty data or methodologies. Originally, I was going to compare how efficient human locomotion was compared to other animals, but since there isn't enough research on the subject, I doubt there is any research into animal locomotion. So I'm going to talk about why we should maximize the benefits of walking in our lives and in our environments. So the benefits of walking are quite simple to understand. Living a non-sedentary lifestyle is quite healthy, with even the terrible mass-produced health articles actually being helpful some of the time. With me being able to find a bunch of varying studies on walking, some of them are on the most specific stuff, like the walking activity and physical function among Mexican and American older adults over 9 years of follow-up, which, looking at results, say that Mexican American adults who walk more are less likely to lose physical functions in limbs. Like, isn't it already obvious that physical activity is good in making sure your limbs work correctly? And why are we focusing on Mexican American adults? Isn't that a very specific category? Why was there no comparison of random people in a similar age group? Anyway, no matter how weirdly specific analysis, articles, or studies are, the general consensus is that walking is in fact healthy for you, with higher amounts of walking being associated with better cardiovascular health, psychological health, and overall improvements in bodily functions. Alright, We originally set out to find how efficient human walking is, and it ended up being a giant waste of time. But we at least were able to find out that walking is healthy for people. At least, it's such an obvious way to improve people's lives that any powerful entity that wants to save money by not spending over 22% of their national budget on privatized healthcare systems, or spending over 44% of their infrastructure budget on a system that is designed to prop up private corporations whose sole purpose is to sell us incredibly deadly boxes on wheels, that also happen to excrete chemicals that are dangerous to inhale and increase the temperature all over the globe. Not to mention all the money they spend bailing out any of those failing industries or any potential conflicts over limited fuel sources for these death boxes. So this part is for any fictional entity that couldn't possibly exist in real life. First, you need to maximize the distance a person is willing to travel before they give up. For instance, let's say a man needs to go to the grocery store, but the only way for them to walk to the grocery store is on a highly active road. You can overcome this by simply adding a sidewalk. Next, you need to optimize the distance between where a person starts and where the person needs to go. Let's use the main example again with a man at the store. How far away can the store be before the person deems it too much of a distance to walk? So in order to decrease walking time from location to location, you have to increase building density. The last thing you need to do is keep in mind that sometimes you shouldn't follow these points to a T, because sometimes it's a good idea to have your job working in a landfill away from your house. So you need to have a variety in ways in which people can travel, like public transit, for instance. Buses, bikes, trains, and trams are all forms of transportation that support and strengthen each other in ways that individual transportation ever could. Honestly, I feel like I failed to accomplish the whole point of the original project, trying to find out if one of the most defining characteristics of our species was actually anything to brag about. Like, are we at least better at walking than our dogs? Do our dogs actually walk us? But I did come out of this project learning something. I probably won't ever touch any general health science again because I spent most of my time trying to research and investigate for walking just for it to be filled with a bunch of useless articles using terrible data and jargon, trying to confuse as many people as possible. So I at least learned to avoid topics like this in the future, like the plague. I do feel like I actually made something semi-productive on how walking is healthy and how to build a environment to support those healthy habits. So to leave my final comment on this mixed bag of a project, it would probably be cars are big metal demons that need to fucking die. Okay, this is me without any script or anything. Like once I'm done editing all of this and whatnot, I wanted to talk about some of the things I did in this video. First of all, the art. I use Krita as the main drawing source of my projects. So when I drew, I tried experimenting with an art style I'm trying to create, more like a black and white retro sort of thing. And me trying to improve upon that, I tried using different tools to texture it. Like you can see in my channel banner that I used different equally spread dots for the bus stop and some shading, like some mist for lighting effects. I tried texturing walls and stuff in this video for the main background with the cafe and the road. But on different screens, the outcome turned out differently. So I have two different screens in front of me right now. One displayed a different image than the other when I just slid the picture over. Like on one side, you can barely see it, which it's pretty good. But on the other side, you can clearly see the parts where I textured and what tools I used to do that. So in the future, I'll probably try improving my drawing skills and probably double checking which on both of my monitors to make sure the video actually looks the same. Because I only noticed the picture looked different depending on what monitor I used after I was done editing. So that kind of sucked. And for the topic itself, um, like I really wanted to talk about like walking in general. Like I like the idea of the USA and like implementing a like generalized walking. I don't know how to put this into words. Like I tried to do it through scripts, which most of this video was. Like there were some parts of the video where I improvised a bit with the wording because I haven't written in like a year or two, so my writing was terrible. There's parts of the thing where I misspelled a bunch of stuff and I didn't catch it until I was speaking. So I just tried to power through it. And you can see over time through the recordings, because I have each section as a different point of time, you can see me gradually improving how I'm reading the scripts so they sound a little bit better, but not that much. So I'll try to improve that at the end. This is sort of a outro conclusion. So I guess goodbye. See you next time. I'll probably do a live stream of me trying to improve my drawing skills. So if I decide to do that, I'll catch you guys then.